On the outskirts of the sleepy town of Alders Hollow, nestled deep in the heart of the Appalachian foothills, life moved at an unhurried pace. This was the kind of place where doors were seldom locked, and the evening air was punctuated by the sound of cicadas and the occasional bark of a distant dog. But all of that changed one humid summer night when the tranquil facade of Alders Hollow was shattered by a gruesome crime that would forever haunt its residents. It began at the old Greystone estate, a sprawling, dilapidated property that had long been a source of local lore. The estate's history was steeped in whispers of tragedy and misfortune. Built in the 1800s by a wealthy coal baron, it had passed through several hands before falling into disrepair. Its current owner, Henry Prescott, was a reclusive man in his late 60s who spent his days tending to the overgrown gardens surrounding the manor. Prescott was known for his peculiarities. He rarely ventured into town and was often seen wielding an old gardening scythe as he hacked away at the relentless ivy and brambles encroaching on the estate. Prescott's solitary existence was disrupted on the night of July 17th. Sarah Bennett, a local teenager with a penchant for urban exploration, decided to sneak onto the property with her friends, Jake and Emily. Armed with flashlights and a smartphone to document their adventure, they crept through the rusted iron gates under the cover of darkness. The trio was drawn by rumors of hidden treasures and ghostly apparitions said to roam the estate. What they found, however, was far more sinister. Sarah's footage, later recovered by authorities, showed the group giggling nervously as they wandered through the overgrown gardens. The video captured glimpses of the towering, shadowy manor and the eerie stillness that seemed to envelop the property. At one point, Emily pointed her flashlight toward a tool shed near the edge of the garden. The beam illuminated the shed's cracked wooden door, slightly ajar. Against their better judgment, they decided to investigate. Inside the shed, the air was thick with the smell of mildew and damp earth. Tools hung haphazardly on the walls, their rusted edges catching the light. In the center of the shed stood Prescott's scythe, its blade gleaming ominously. Jake joked about taking it as a souvenir, but Emily's unease was palpable. "Let's just go," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. The footage ended abruptly, leaving the remaining sequence of events a mystery. What is known is that, hours later, Emily stumbled into the Alders Hollow Sheriff's Office, covered in blood and incoherent with shock. Through sobs and trembling breaths, she managed to convey that something had gone horribly wrong at Greystone Estate. When Sheriff Tom Ridley and his deputies arrived at the scene, they found Jake's lifeless body sprawled near the tool shed. His neck bore a deep, clean gash, unmistakably inflicted by the scythe. Sarah was nowhere to be found, and Prescott was discovered in the manor's parlor, sitting in an armchair and staring blankly at the wall. His hands and clothes were stained with blood, and the scythe lay discarded at his feet. Prescott was immediately taken into custody, but his interrogation yielded little. He denied any memory of the events, his voice trembling as he insisted he had gone to bed early that night. The townsfolk were quick to pass judgment, branding him a cold-blooded killer. But as the investigation unfolded, cracks began to appear in the seemingly straightforward case. Emily's fragmented account painted a chilling picture. She claimed they had heard strange noises in the garden, whispers that seemed to emanate from the shadows. At one point, Sarah had screamed and vanished into the darkness. Emily and Jake had searched frantically, only to be confronted by a shadowy figure wielding the scythe. Emily's memory of what happened next was a blur, but she was adamant that Prescott had not been the one to attack them. "It wasn't him," she told Sheriff Ridley, her voice quivering. "It was something else." The autopsy report added another layer of complexity. While Jake's fatal wound was consistent with the scythe, forensic analysis suggested an unusual amount of force had been used, more than what Prescott, a frail man with arthritis, could reasonably muster. Additionally, traces of an unidentified substance were found on the blade, a sticky black residue that baffled the lab technicians. The investigation took Sheriff Ridley deep into the estate's past, combing through town records and old newspapers. He uncovered tales of misfortune that spanned over a century. A farmhand was said to have vanished while tending to the gardens in the 1920s, leaving behind only a blood-stained glove. In 1954, the then-owner's young daughter drowned in the estate's pond under mysterious circumstances, her body found clutching a flower with petals blackened as if scorched. More recent rumors spoke of ghostly lights that danced in the windows and shadowy figures glimpsed in the dead of night. As the days turned into weeks, the case grew colder. Searches of the estate yielded no sign of Sarah, and Prescott remained steadfast in his claims of innocence. The whispers in town grew louder, with some speculating that the estate itself was cursed. Stories emerged of previous owners meeting untimely deaths and of strange lights seen flickering in the manor's windows at night. Those brave enough to venture near the property spoke of an oppressive atmosphere and the sensation of being watched. Sheriff Ridley, a pragmatic man, struggled to reconcile the evidence with the growing hysteria. He revisited the footage from Sarah's phone, scrutinizing every frame for clues. In one particularly chilling segment, as the camera panned across the garden, a faint, shadowy figure could be seen in the distance, watching the group. Ridley's initial instinct was to dismiss it as a trick of the light, but he couldn't shake the unease it brought. The case took an even stranger turn when Prescott's lawyer uncovered an old journal belonging to one of the estate's previous owners. The journal detailed bizarre occurrences on the property, including sightings of a spectral figure carrying a scythe. One entry, dated 1923, described the entity as a harbinger of death, drawn to those who disturb the soil. Another entry, scrawled hastily and smudged with what appeared to be blood, warned, "Do not unearth what lies beneath. The garden holds its secrets close, and it will defend them." The breakthrough came when Ridley received a call from a retired archaeologist named Dr. Margaret Lowe, who had read about the case in the news. Intrigued by the estate's history and the journal's cryptic warnings, Dr. Lowe offered her expertise. Together with a small team, she conducted a detailed survey of the garden, focusing on areas where the soil appeared disturbed. After days of digging, they unearthed a chilling discovery, a shallow grave containing skeletal remains. The bones were later identified as belonging to a young man who had gone missing in the 1920s, a farmhand employed by the estate's owner at the time. The body showed signs of blunt force trauma, consistent with the blade of a scythe. Nearby, they found an ornate pendant, engraved with the initials H.P. Prescott was initially implicated once again, but further investigation revealed the truth. The pendant belonged to his great-grandfather, Harold Prescott, who had owned the estate during the 1920s. Harold had reportedly been a cruel and violent man, known for his harsh treatment of his workers. It became clear that the farmhand's death had been covered up, his body hastily buried to conceal the crime. Dr. Lowe posited that the malevolent presence haunting the estate was the restless spirit of the murdered farmhand, seeking justice for his untimely death. The scythe, a tool of his labor and demise, had become a conduit for his rage. This theory gained credence when Emily, under hypnosis, recalled a voice whispering, "Justice," just before the attack. Armed with this new understanding, Ridley arranged for the remains to be properly exhumed and reburied in the town cemetery. A small ceremony was held, attended by the archaeologists, local clergy, and a few townsfolk. As the priest offered prayers, the oppressive atmosphere surrounding the estate seemed to lift, as though a weight had been lifted from the land. In the weeks that followed, the strange occurrences ceased. The lights in the manor's windows no longer flickered, and the whispers in the garden fell silent. Prescott, though shaken by the revelations, decided to leave Alders Hollow and start anew, gifting the estate to the town for preservation. As for Sarah, her fate was finally revealed when hikers discovered her in a remote section of the forest, alive but disoriented. She had no memory of how she got there, but spoke of a calming presence guiding her away from the estate. Medical examinations confirmed she had survived on rainwater and wild berries, a testament to her resilience. With the mystery resolved, Alders Hollow began to heal. The Greystone estate was transformed into a historical site, its dark past serving as a cautionary tale. Sheriff Ridley retired with a sense of closure, his dreams no longer haunted by shadows and screams.